In the vast expanse of space, there's an old saying that fear travels faster than light. Tonight, in a dimly lit cantina on Station Delta 7, two of the galaxy's most feared warriors were about to learn why humans had earned a reputation that made even hardened mercenaries whisper their name. Not because humans were the strongest, or the fastest, or even the most technologically advanced. No, humans were feared for something far more terrifying: their absolute refusal to accept defeat. 3 standard cycles ago, humanity had burst onto the galactic scene, not with grand ships of war or technological marvels, but with a simple merchant vessel that had accidentally stumbled through a wormhole. The galaxy had largely dismissed them as another unremarkable species, too fragile, too primitive, too soft. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was assuming that human military doctrine was based on winning. It wasn't. It was based on something far more primal: survival at any cost. The Doubledown Cantina had seen its share of violence over the years. Situated in the commercial sector of Station Delta 7, it served as a melting pot where dozens of species came to drink, deal, and occasionally settle scores. The station's reinforced windows offered a panoramic view of the spiral arm of the galaxy, a reminder of just how far from home everyone was. The ambient lighting pulsed softly in sync with the low thrum of the station's massive engines, casting ever-shifting shadows across the faces of its patrons. Praswell and Vex Thor, the Stovaxx brothers, had ruled this particular corner of the station for the better part of a standard year. Their species had evolved on a death world with triple Earth's gravity, where even the plants had developed a taste for meat. The brothers stood nearly 3 meters tall, their iridescent scales shifting colors under the bar's lights, muscles rippling beneath natural armor plates that could deflect most small arms fire. Their kind had earned their reputation as apex predators across 17 star systems. But tonight, something was different. The brothers could feel it in their bones, in that primitive part of their brains that had kept their ancestors alive in the killing fields of their homeworld. When the 5 humans walked into the cantina, there was no dramatic pause in the music, no sudden silence falling over the crowd. Instead, there was something far more subtle: the slight shifting of experienced warriors adjusting their positions, the quiet murmur of veterans who recognized the way these newcomers moved. The humans were deceptively unimpressive at first glance. Wearing simple station-issued jumpsuits in mottled green, they looked almost fragile compared to the other species present. No natural armor, no visible weapons, no augmentations, just 5 beings who moved with the quiet confidence of those who had seen more than their share of violence and lived to tell about it. The only distinctive mark on their clothing was a patch showing a brown eagle perched upon a silver globe, bordered by gold and red, the symbol of the newly formed Human Marine Corps. What happened next would become the stuff of legend, a story told in whispered conversations across 1,000 space stations. It would mark the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed these newcomers from a backwater solar system. But more importantly, it would teach the Stovaxx brothers, and by extension the entire galactic community, why humans had earned their peculiar reputation. If you're ready to discover why the galaxy's most feared warriors learned to think twice before challenging humans, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and activate those notifications. Your support helps bring more stories from humanity's adventures among the stars. Now, let's continue our tale. The dark-skinned human who had stepped forward was Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Smokesands, a veteran of Earth's last ground war before first contact. The smoke tube dangling from his lips wasn't just a habit, it was a calculated tool of psychological warfare. In his 20 years of service, he'd learned that nothing unnerved alien species quite like watching a human deliberately inhale burning plant matter for pleasure. Behind him stood his team. Staff Sergeant Sarah Ghost Chen, a close-quarters combat specialist whose deceptively slight frame had once enabled her to disassemble a Kraxan war mech with nothing but a multi-tool and sheer determination. Corporal James Doc Martinez, whose medical knowledge extended to both healing and the precise application of pain. Private first-class twins Michael and David O'Connor, whose synchronized fighting style had earned them the shared nickname Echo. The Stovaxx brothers' translator chips struggled to process the subtle undertones in Gunny San's voice. What their technology interpreted as submission, humans never win fights, their instincts registered as something far more dangerous. There was no fear in the human stance, no submission in his posture. Instead, there was something that their predatory minds couldn't quite comprehend: absolute certainty. Krasdal, the elder brother, took a step forward, his claws flexing unconsciously. "Perhaps you misunderstand, little human," he growled, the translator rendering his words into standard Galactic with a menacing undertone. "This isn't a request. The toll is mandatory for your protection." The remaining patrons in the cantina were now pressing themselves against the walls, creating a clear space around the impending confrontation. Several activated their communits, ready to record what they assumed would be another example of Stovaxx dominance. They couldn't have known they were about to witness the birth of a legend. Gunny Sands took one last long drag from his smoke tube before deliberately extinguishing it against the bar's metallic surface. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, a small act of defiance that spoke volumes. "You know," he said conversationally, "there's something most species don't understand about humans and fighting." The O'Connor twins exchanged that subtle glance that only siblings who fought together could understand. Ghost Chen's fingers twitched almost imperceptibly toward the seemingly decorative bracelet on her wrist, a neural-linked garrote disguised as jewelry. Doc Martinez casually shifted his weight, positioning himself where he could reach either brother in 3 steps. Vexter, the younger Stovaxx, flared his neck ridges in amusement. "And what's that, human? That you die easily?" His clawed hand reached for Sans' shoulder, intending to demonstrate their species' notorious grip strength. The movement never completed. In the space between heartbeats, Sans had already moved, not back, as the Stovaxx expected, but forward, inside the reach of those deadly claws. His elbow connected with Vexthor's throat scales in precisely the spot where all reptilian species shared a cluster of sensitive nerve endings. The Stovaxx's eyes widened in shock as his respiratory system temporarily seized. What followed wasn't a fight, it was a demonstration of why humans had survived on their own death world long before they developed tools. The O'Connor twins moved in perfect synchronization, years of training transforming them into a single fluid weapon. They targeted Krazel's leg joints, striking at angles that bypassed the natural armor. Ghost Chen seemed to flicker like a malfunctioning hollow projection, appearing in impossible spaces between the Stovax's strikes. Her garrote wire flashed in the cantina's lights as she used the brothers' own strength against them, letting their momentum do the work. Doc Martinez's movements were precise, clinical, each strike targeting nerve clusters and pressure points that worked across species. He wasn't fighting to win, he was systematically dismantling the brothers' ability to fight back. The entire engagement lasted exactly 27 seconds. When station security finally arrived, they found the Stovaxx brothers unconscious but carefully arranged in recovery positions that prevented choking courtesy of Doc's medical training. The humans were already cleaning up, using bar towels to wipe away blood both green and red. The lead security officer, a Centaurian with decades of experience, could only stare at the scene. How did you? Sans lit a fresh smoke tube, the familiar ritual helping his combat breathing return to normal. "Like I said, humans never win fights, we just survive them, and we've gotten very, very good at surviving." The story spread across the station's comm networks within hours. By the next cycle, it had reached 3 neighboring systems. Within a standard week, every major species had updated their threat assessment of humanity. Not because humans were the strongest, not because they were the most advanced, but because they had demonstrated something far more dangerous: the ability to adapt, to improvise, and, most importantly, to survive against any odds. In the following months, the number of incidents involving humans dropped to near 0. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans might never win fights, but that's exactly what made them so terrifying. They weren't interested in victory, they were interested in survival. And they had turned survival into an art form. The incident at the Doubledown Cantina became a turning point in galactic politics, though few realized it at the time. The security footage, captured by dozens of patrons' personal devices, spread through the galactic networks like a quantum virus. Species that had dismissed humans as soft, primitive bipeds began to look closer at their history. What they found terrified them. While other species evolved natural weapons, claws, armor, venom, humans had evolved something far more dangerous: adaptability. Their historical records showed a species that had survived everything their world had thrown at them, from ice ages to predators many times their size. They hadn't just survived, they'd thrived. In the weeks following the Cantina incident, xenobiologists began publishing frantic papers about human physiology, the way they could repair broken bones to be stronger than before, their ability to maintain physical activity long after other species would have collapsed from exhaustion, their inexplicable capacity to function despite severe injury. One researcher noted with horror that humans could survive losing entire limbs and still continue fighting. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The recordings from the Cantina were analyzed frame by frame. The way the humans had moved, the precision of their strikes, the absolute efficiency of their teamwork, it all pointed to something that the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had turned survival itself into a martial art. Back on Station Delta 7, Gunny Sands and his team had become minor celebrities, though they seemed more amused than impressed by the attention. They continued their shore leave as if nothing extraordinary had happened, spending their evenings at the same cantina, which was now significantly more peaceful than it had ever been. The Stovaxx brothers, after their release from medical care, did something unprecedented. They approached the humans not with anger or thoughts of revenge, but with curiosity. Over drinks that would have killed most species, they asked the question that was now echoing across the galaxy. How do you do it? How do you fight without seeking victory? Sans, lighting another smoke tube, considered the question carefully. The answer he gave would eventually be inscribed in military academies across 1,000 worlds. Victory is temporary, survival is eternal. Every human child learns this before they can walk. We don't fight to prove we're stronger or better. We fight because sometimes it's the only way to make it to tomorrow. And tomorrow is always worth fighting for. The ripples from that night spread far beyond Station Delta 7. In the prestigious Galactic Military Academy on Centauri Prime, instructors began revising their combat doctrines. The old ways, focused on overwhelming force and decisive victory, suddenly seemed short-sighted when compared to the human approach. Intelligence agencies across the galaxy started digging deeper into Earth's military history. What they found in humanity's archives left them sleepless. Humans had a concept they called guerrilla warfare, fighting without front lines, without rules, using the environment itself as a weapon. They had perfected the art of asymmetric warfare centuries before reaching the stars. The Stovaxx brothers became unexpected ambassadors for human combat philosophy. They established the first Cross-Sketes Combat Training Center on Station Delta 7, with Gunny Sans and his team as occasional guest instructors. The sight of the galaxy's most feared warriors learning from humans they once dismissed as weak became a powerful symbol of change. But it wasn't just about fighting. Human Diplomatic Corps began receiving requests for cultural exchange programs. Species across the galaxy wanted to understand how humans thought, how they approached problems, how they had developed this unique perspective on survival. The Arcanian philosophers, known for their thousand-year contemplations, published a groundbreaking thesis, The Human Paradox, Victory Through Survival. They argued that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their ability to learn from every conflict, to adapt, to become stronger through adversity. 6 months after the Cantina incident, a Craxan warfleet encountered a single human transport ship in disputed space. Instead of their usual aggressive approach, the Craxan commander opened communications. When asked why, he simply replied, "Because humans don't need to win to destroy you. They just need to survive longer than you can fight." On Earth, the story had a different impact. Humans had always known they weren't the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. But now they understood that their greatest strength, their relentless drive to survive, was something unique in the cosmos. The galaxy was changing, and at the heart of this change was a simple truth that Gunny Sans had known all along. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about getting back up, about learning, adapting, and surviving to fight another day. If you're enjoying this tale of human perseverance among the stars, don't forget to crush that like button and join our growing community of space story enthusiasts. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories from humanity's adventures in the galaxy. Now, let's dive back into how a simple bar fight changed the course of galactic history. 1 year after the Doubledown Cantina incident, the Galactic Council made an unprecedented decision. They created a new diplomatic position, Human Survival Consultant. These specialists would advise various species on everything from military strategy to crisis management, teaching the art of adaptation that humans had perfected over millennia. The first major test of this new paradigm came during the Great Nebula Crisis. When a quantum storm threatened to destroy 3 major trade routes, the Council turned to human experts for solutions. Instead of trying to overpower or outmaneuver the storm, traditional approaches that had failed, they implemented what humans called riding the wave. The resulting strategy saved trillions in commerce and countless lives. Gunny Sans and his team had long since returned to active duty, but their legacy lived on. The Doubledown Cantina became a pilgrimage site of sorts, with visitors from across the galaxy coming to sit at the bar where it all began. The owner, a shrewd Ventaxian, had preserved the exact spot where Sans had extinguished his smoke tube, marking it with a small plaque that read, "Here fell the myth of human weakness." The Stovaxx brothers' combat training center evolved into the galaxy's premier survival school. Their motto, "Survive first, win later," became a mantra repeated in military academies across known space. The brothers themselves had undergone a profound transformation, becoming living examples of how even the most rigid warrior cultures could adapt and grow. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed conflict itself. The old measures of victory and defeat began to seem simplistic, even childish, compared to the human perspective of continuous adaptation and survival. Species that had warred for generations began to ask themselves a new question: was winning worth the cost of failing to survive? The first galactic survival games emerged as an unexpected consequence of humanity's growing influence. Unlike traditional combat tournaments that focused on victory, these games tested participants' ability to adapt and endure. The inaugural event was held in the harsh environment of Mars's Olympus Mons, a fitting tribute to humanity's first extraterrestrial colony. Teams from 17 species competed in challenges that would have seemed insane just a few years earlier. The Stovaxx brothers led their species team, while Gunny Sands served as head judge. The events ranged from endurance trials in varying gravity conditions to problem-solving scenarios with dwindling resources. The game's final challenge became legendary. Participants were dropped into Mars's most treacherous canyon during a dust storm, with minimal equipment and a simple objective: survive for 72 hours. What happened next shocked even the human observers. The Arcanian team, usually known for their philosophical nature, formed an alliance with the Stovaxx warriors. The Centaurians, traditional rivals of the Stovaxx, joined forces with the Ventaxians. Species that had never cooperated began working together, sharing resources and knowledge. They weren't just surviving, they were adapting, humanity's greatest lesson. Sometimes the best way to survive is to help others survive with you. When the dust settled, there were no winners declared. Instead, every team that made it through was awarded the title of Survivor, with special recognition for those who had helped others endure. The games became an annual event, rotating between the harshest environments each participating species could offer. But the game's true impact went far beyond sport. They became a laboratory for cross-species cooperation and innovation. Technologies developed for survival in one species' environment found unexpected applications in others. Trading agreements were forged in the midst of shared hardship. Traditional enemies found common ground in their struggle to endure. The Galactic Council noted with interest that in the 5 years following the first games, interspecies conflicts decreased by 63%. It seemed that species who had learned to survive together were less interested in fighting each other. The Galactic Cooperation Initiative began with a simple question posed by a young human diplomat. What if we treated the entire galaxy as a survival challenge? The idea spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. If species could work together to survive harsh environments in the games, why not apply that same principle to exploring the unknown reaches of space? The first test came when long-range sensors detected an anomaly in the galactic core, a region previously considered too dangerous for exploration. Traditional approaches would have sent heavily armed research vessels. Instead, they assembled multi-species crews trained in survival tactics, each bringing their unique adaptations and problem-solving approaches. The mission's flagship, the GSV Endurance, represented this new philosophy in its very design. The bridge crew included a Stovaxx tactical officer, a human survival specialist, an Arcanian quantum physicist, and a Ventaxian environmental expert. Even the ship itself incorporated survival mechanisms from various species, self-repairing hull technology from the Centaurians, adaptive shielding inspired by Stovaxx scales, and human mean redundancy systems. What they discovered in the galactic core would have been catastrophic under the old paradigm of competition and conquest. They found evidence of an ancient civilization that had destroyed itself trying to harness the power of supermassive black holes. More importantly, they detected signs that the same technological path was being pursued by several current species. Instead of hoarding this information or using it as leverage, the Endurance crew made an unprecedented decision. They broadcast their findings to every species simultaneously, along with a message that would change the course of galactic history. Some challenges are too big for any one species to survive alone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been racing toward potential self-destruction began reaching out to each other, sharing research, combining their knowledge to find safer alternatives. The human concept of survival through cooperation had evolved from a military philosophy to a cornerstone of galactic civilization. The crisis began silently, in the void between spiral arms. A Ventaxian deep space probe detected something that shouldn't exist, a wave of dark energy that devoured light itself. Initial calculations showed it would reach populated space within 5 years, potentially destroying everything in its path. Under the old system, species would have scrambled to save themselves, hoarding resources and abandoning outer colonies. Instead, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session that became known as the Summit of Survival. Representatives from every known species gathered on Station Delta 7, the very station where humanity's influence had first made its mark. Gunny Sands, now Admiral Sands, stood before the assembled delegates. His famous smoke tube had long since been replaced by neural implants, but his philosophy remained unchanged. "We're not here to win against this threat," he announced. "We're here to ensure everyone survives it." The response was unprecedented. The Stovaxx offered their strongest ships, the Arcanians shared their quantum research, the Centaurians opened their shielded bunker worlds, humanity contributed their expertise in adapting to impossible situations, even species that had remained isolated for millennia joined the effort. They called it Project Endurance, a fitting tribute to the mission that had first united them. The plan was audacious: create a network of modified space stations that could generate a survival bubble around inhabited space. Each station would be crewed by multiple species, combining their unique abilities and perspectives to maintain the shield. The construction effort became the largest cooperative project in galactic history. Ships from 100 worlds worked together, racing against time. When resources ran low, species shared without hesitation. When problems arose, they were solved by combining approaches from different evolutionary paths. But as the dark energy wave approached, they realized their shield wasn't going to be enough. That's when humanity introduced a concept that would once again change everything. They didn't need to stop the wave. They just needed to adapt to it. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a human child science project. 10-year-old Sarah Chen, daughter of the legendary Ghost Chen, had been studying ancient Earthsea life. She noted how certain deep-sea creatures didn't fight against crushing ocean pressures. They adapted to use that pressure to their advantage. The concept revolutionized their approach. Instead of trying to block the dark energy wave, they could learn to ride it. Humanity's survival philosophy had always emphasized adapting to threats rather than defeating them. Now, that principle would be tested on a galactic scale. The modified plan was beautiful in its elegance. The shield stations were repurposed into massive energy converters, designed to absorb and redirect the dark energy. Each station incorporated elements from different species: Stovaxx armor technology, Arcanian quantum processors, Centaurian power cores, and human redundancy systems. As the wave approached, something remarkable happened. Species that had once competed for resources now worked in perfect harmony. The Galactic Defense Fleet, once divided by species, became a single unified force. Ships of all designs and origins formed a protective screen around civilian evacuation corridors, their crews mixing and matching based on ability rather than species. The day the wave hit became known as the Long Night. For 72 hours, every inhabited system experienced total darkness as the wave passed through. But in that darkness, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented: perfect cooperation between all sapient species. Station after station activated, not fighting the wave but channeling it. The absorbed energy was redirected into massive quantum batteries, providing enough power to sustain civilization for centuries. What had started as a potential apocalypse became the greatest technological leap forward in galactic history. When the light returned, the galaxy had changed forever. The experience of facing extinction together, of surviving through cooperation rather than competition, had forged bonds that would never break. The old rivalries and prejudices that had divided species for millennia seemed trivial in comparison to what they had achieved together. In the cycles following the Long Night, the galaxy entered what historians would later call the Age of Adaptation. The energy harvested from the dark wave powered a renaissance of technology and cooperation. But more importantly, it fundamentally changed how species viewed each other and their place in the cosmos. The Stovaxx brothers, now elderly but still teaching at their combat school, summed it up perfectly during a graduation ceremony. We used to measure strength by the ability to dominate. Now we measure it by the ability to adapt and help others adapt. Station Delta 7 was transformed into the Galactic Survival Academy, with the Doubledown Cantina preserved as its ceremonial heart. Every cycle, representatives from hundreds of species gathered there to share new survival techniques and adaptation strategies. The spot where Gunny Sands had once faced down the Stovaxx brothers became a symbolic place where species set aside their differences. Admiral Sands, his hair now white but his eyes still sharp, often visited to speak with new students. His famous quote became the Academy's motto: "Survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being able to change while keeping your core principles intact." The human approach to survival began influencing everything from architecture to agriculture. Cities across the galaxy were redesigned with multiple redundancies and adaptation capabilities. Food production systems incorporated backup methods from various species. Even entertainment changed, with multi-species survival challenges replacing traditional competitive sports. But perhaps the most profound change was in how the galaxy approached new challenges. When a previously unknown species was discovered struggling with a dying sun, the response was immediate and unified. Instead of seeing potential competitors or subjects for conquest, the galactic community saw fellow survivors who needed help adapting. The human's peculiar philosophy had evolved into something greater than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy had learned that true strength wasn't about dominating others or even about individual survival. It was about ensuring everyone made it through together. If you've stayed with us through this incredible journey, you're part of something special. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of cosmic storytellers. Every like helps share the legacy of humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. Now, let's see how this story ends. A century after the long night, the Galactic Council commissioned a monument on Station Delta 7. Not a statue or a plaque, but something uniquely human in concept, a living memorial that adapted and changed with time. At its heart was a simple holographic display showing the original Cantina footage, surrounded by constantly updating achievements of interspecies cooperation. The memorial's dedication ceremony brought together faces both old and new. Admiral Sands, now well past 100 but sustained by advanced medical technology, stood alongside the youngest generation of the Stovaxx brothers' students. His final public speech became required learning in every school across known space. We never set out to change the galaxy. We just did what humans have always done, survived and helped others survive. In doing so, we discovered something profound. The strongest force in the universe isn't gravity or dark energy or even love. It's the will to adapt, to endure, and to ensure others endure with you. The human phrase, "never win fights," was eventually added to the galactic common language, but its meaning had evolved. It no longer meant just survival or combat philosophy. It had become shorthand for finding unexpected solutions, for turning potential defeat into opportunity, for choosing cooperation over conflict. As humanity spread further into the stars, they carried this legacy with them. Each new challenge, each new discovery, was approached not with the question, how do we win, but how do we ensure everyone survives? This subtle shift in perspective continued to reshape galactic civilization in unexpected ways. The Doubledown Cantina still stands today, now a bustling center of cultural exchange. Its walls are lined with images showing pivotal moments in galactic cooperation. But in pride of place, above the exact spot where it all began, hangs a simple earth plant, a preserved tobacco leaf, with words that sum up humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Victory is temporary, survival is eternal, but together we can achieve both. And so, what began as a simple bar fight became the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history, not through force of arms or technological superiority, but through the simple, profound human understanding that true strength lies not in winning, but in making sure everyone makes it through to tomorrow. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful force isn't the ability to win fights, it's the wisdom to know that survival itself is the greatest victory of all. That's the end of our tale, space travelers. If this story of humanity's impact on the galaxy resonated with you, don't forget to smash that like button and join our growing community of cosmic storytellers by subscribing. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss our next adventure among the stars. Want to share your thoughts on humanity's unique approach to survival? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your perspective on how humans changed the galaxy forever. And if you enjoyed this story, share it with a friend who appreciates tales of human ingenuity and adaptation. Until our next journey through the cosmos, remember, survival isn't just about making it through, it's about helping others make it too. See you in the next story, space travelers.